Hello today to those of you out in Radio Land. We're kind of excited here at in the studios of KBBG, located at 918 Loon Street, right here in the heart of the city. And we are just delighted that we have a number of people with us today. And guess what the topic is? I'll bet you every one of you who are listening, you know what the topic is going to be. Certainly we're going to talk about the results of the election and the fact that President Barack Obama continues to be president of these United States. We want to invite you to the call. There will be opportunity, I would say about a half an hour into the program. Phones will be open and you'll be able to reach us here at 234-1441. We are, and Lou Porter here, and joined today by Dr. Scharron Clayton.
Good morning, Lou.
Dr. Blackwell.
Good
Glad to have you
Good to
with
be
us.
here. Yeah, thank you.
I see.
This is Jonathan Narcisse on the phone too.
Oh, Jonathan North. Okay, Jonathan, you're on the phone joining us from Cedar Rapids. And we have, what did I say, Cedar Rapids,
Yeah.
Des Moines. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you. We want to welcome our representative, Deborah Berry.
Thank you, Lou. Good morning.
Yes, and you went from, Deborah, you used to represent Ward 4 and now it's Ward 62?
Ward 22,
22.
District 22, now House
District.
District 62.
62.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And,
Ward 4, that's that old city council.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a long time ago. Yeah.
That's right.
okay,
She in the big
okay.
leagues now. Yeah.
All right. And David is here with us as well, and we may be joined by some other people who will join us at a later time. I don't want to even be the one to start this. We're going to do something a little different and ask for an overview, and guess who I'm looking at? Right here, right here. Your overview, your own overview of what has happened and what you've been hearing and so forth, and then followed by Dr. Scharron Clayton. We're ready to hear from you.
Oh, okay. Well, unlike David Goodson, I was not as optimistic going into the election. I was a little worried when the returns first were coming in on Tuesday, but increasingly became elated, of course, looking at the Electoral College numbers. And so I think that, there are two things that I would observe about the election is that, that even though we have an African American as president, there is still racial polarization
Yes.
among the electorate. And, but a second thing is that I am pleased that people aged 45 and younger voted disproportionately in favor of Obama. And I'm not, going across cultural lines, racial lines, and so I am pleased about that. Maybe that gives a little bit of hope that we who are older, present company included, we who are older maybe are stuck in our ways, but the younger generation, or those who are younger, seem to be able to determine a little bit more than I thought they could about what's really going on in the political arena. So those two things, I think, and plus, of course, that African Americans and Latinos voted quite a bit in favor of Obama.
Mm-hmm.
That is, even though there are still some fractures in the relationship between blacks and Latinos, I think that there's a recognition that at least politically, economically, socioculturally, we are almost in the same boat, and so they voted overwhelmingly for Obama.
Okay, and I wanted to now turn to Dr. Scharron Clayton, and I wanted it to start this way because what we would not have been able to hear, and I'll let you take us there.
Oh, okay. Arguably one of the elders in the room. Thank you, Dr. Blackwell, for saying that. Once he said that, I was unable to follow you any further. I became so fixated. I said, that would be me, you know. Let me say first that this community is so blessed and privileged to have KBBG radio station here to continually inform the public about the issues and about the need to vote. And so I want to applaud KBBG, and I want to encourage the listeners to realize that had this station not covered so much of the need to vote, to get out to vote, to have voices in, you would not have heard that any other place in the Cedar Valley. We are the information center for the Cedar Valley with a desire to continually educate the public. So I want to say that because as we go forward in the next few years, I would hope that the young people in that group, 45 and younger, who showed up to vote will recognize the need to support KBBG so that we can continue to have a voice in these elections on the state, local, and national level. So I wanted to say that to you, Lou, and also to the public. Getting elected is like getting free. But getting free is one stage, staying free is another. And to stay in the cut, so to speak, you know, we've got to remain educated and we've got to remain involved. So one of the things that this election meant to me was that I could see that people care about this particular national election and the statewide. But what I had developed was hope that the caring would remain and that those issues that are important to us, such as education, to keep a young group going forward, would remain on the table for all of those people who voted, so that they don't go home and forget that involvement means continual involvement and staying appraised of what the situation is. On Tuesday night, Lou, after teaching classes, I got in late, and I must be just chicken, because I turned on the results and I saw what was happening, and so I turned off the results. I hopped in the bed and I said, well, my husband will keep texting me or something to tell me what happens. But I didn't ever think that we would not win the election. Because one thing I do know is that faith and fear cannot occupy the same space. And so I've had an incredible amount of faith in just the country, particularly because of the young students that I have, who basically were children during 9/11, and they've stayed politically tuned in to see what's going on in the world. These are young kids who've known nothing but war, and they've also known nothing but increasing costs for education. And so I've heard from that particular population quite a bit. But I think Dr. Blackwell, as usual, has summed this up, you know, pretty good in terms of the election and what we saw happen with the various groups that come out. The one other thing that I would say is that it was probably the most expensive job interview I've ever seen executed. To spend $6 billion on an election and then to suggest that you can't have your taxes increased, I think that's abhorrent, you know, because that could have been a big donation, either to the government or to the poor, because I didn't think the poor received the kind of attention in the election that they should have. I think we focus so much on the middle class that we will begin to make everybody think they're middle class, and actually more people are poor than middle class, and that's where our rhetoric should have been.
And we want to go right on around the table, and Representative Deborah Berry, congratulations, of course.
Congrats.
What was it, 87, 89%?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she must have passed out chickens and stuff. That was remarkable.
just
Congrats,
wonderful.
yeah.
I'll tell you, I worked harder than I had in a long time.
Okay.
And with a broken ankle, and no
Yeah.
doubt, so.
And it paid off.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and
So-
let me just start by thanking you, Lou, for the opportunity to, and KBBG to be here today to engage in this discussion, election conversation. Yeah, it has been indeed a very exciting, and I guess I could even say a little bit bittersweet, because again, with my condition, trying to campaign, but I've had a group of incredible volunteers and people helping, and making phone calls, and door knocking for me, putting signs out for me, just doing, and just the call. So I want to publicly thank everybody who just offered their assistance to me during this campaign season. I can tell you this, Dr. Clayton, when I woke up the next morning, I was kind of like you, a little bit uncomfortable in terms of wanting to watch the entire presidential election, but I just had to. So because of course there was also a lot at stake here in Iowa too, for the Iowa legislature, and thankfully we didn't gain majority in the Iowa House. However, we maintained Senate control. Democrats are in control of the Senate. So our makeup in the state of Iowa is a lot like Congress. You have, but in our case we have a Republican governor, and strong Democratic Senate, and then a Republican House. So, but I always say to people, thank God for the Senate last session, because they were able to stop a lot of bad legislation that would have also impacted the lives of many Iowans as well. So. So again, we gained a few seats, but we really, we were hoping that we would gain control in the House. But in any event, regarding the presidency, I was just impressed by just the enthusiasm of the people, the volunteers, just the fact that everyone was engaged in this election more than I've ever seen before. And I think it's because everyone is, sometimes people take for granted the voters and those who are participating in this thing, and refer to them as low information voters. In other words, they believe every commercial that they see, and then they're going to make a decision based on commercials. Well, this was totally different, because as you mentioned about the $6 billion in advertising that went out, we can say that, people are smarter. They're smart, they're engaged. They knew when they were being lied to. They knew when they were, just the truth was not told, when there were exaggerations. And they also knew, I think, that the fact that all this money is in these campaigns, something's wrong when you're trying to buy an election. And I know Congressman Bruce Braley was another one here in the state of Iowa who faced a lot of outside money coming into his race, and yet he pulled it off too. So we saw a lot of that. Senator Jeff Danielson, Representative Bob Kresick, Representative Vanessa Katazovic, all held on to their House seats, and his Senate seat, and money was coming in against these folks. So I just want to say thank you to the voters, that they were informed, they were engaged, they were not put off by, this one commercial versus another, but they really did their homework and investigated and researched and asked questions. I mean, even when it came to the ballot process, I had many people calling me regarding Justice Wiggins, who's a Supreme Court Justice, who was on the ballot, and we all know that there was, and Jonathan will probably, him being in Des Moines, he knows a lot about how certain individuals will campaign against our Supreme Court justices if they don't agree with a ruling that they make. Well, Justice Wiggins did make the right decision, and the voters spoke, and so he retained his seat in the Iowa Supreme judicial system. So I guess with that, I will turn it over to David.
Well, we're gonna, David, why don't you bring Jonathan on?
Okay.
Put you back in your old host mode, huh?
Okay. And before I do, I'll just say again, Lou, thank you for the opportunity. Lou Porter and KBBG for being here today and hosting this forum, this post-election forum. And Doc, Doc Blackwell, if there's any consolation, you know, that landslide that I predicted of Obama, I think the vision must have got shifted to Deborah Berry, Representative Berry. So there was still a landslide, and Obama still won. But yeah, I think we all, those who voted and supported the president, I think we're all elated that history has been made again. His legacy, whatever that may mean in 4 years, hopefully it's a good legacy. However, we also know that it's time to really go to work. So my concern is sort of my celebration or honeymoon period is really over for me, and it's time to go to work to really deal with some of the issues that are, I think, very critical to our community and the community and nation as a whole. So that's where I'm at. And again, I know we're elated that the president has made his second term.
Okay.
So with that, we do have, does this make it plain or?
This is
That's probably community rhythm.
Yeah.
So we have Jonathan Narcissus of Des Moines.
Hello, Jonathan.
Good morning to everyone there. I actually, while I voted for the president and I'm pleased that Mitt Romney did not get elected, especially since towards the end of the campaign, he became pathological in his lying.
The end of his campaign.
We need to put this in perspective. The day before the election, there was gunplay across urban Iowa, and this coming weekend, folks are going to be getting shot at. Our kids still aren't reading the way they ought to be reading. The academic failure in Des Moines, near unanimous. In Waterloo, every high school, every middle school officially faced Cedar Rapids, Davenport. Deborah mentioned Justice Wiggins, and to me, the tragedy of this vote was that it was dominated by the issue of whether you were happy or upset that he supported gay marriage. The reality is that when you look at Iowa leading the nation in injustice, when Mississippi looks at Iowa and says, oh my goodness, when you have a situation where the disparities from the beginning process of racial profiling from police to sentencing to disparities in our prisons to the brutality of our prisons is ignored by a judiciary where these judges sit as the custodians of accountability. Justice Wiggins never should have gotten an African-American vote, nor a vote of anyone concerned with justice. But here I think is where the challenge lies for us. That the value of President Obama winning is it made us feel good. And when we feel good, we're more apt to do something positive than be depressed and sit at home. But beyond his victory giving us hope, it hasn't created change. And this is where I think the challenge now comes for us to get serious about the crisis facing us as a people. Poverty is inexplicable. In Des Moines, Davenport, Waterloo, we're looking at 50, 60, 70% of the families with kids in our schools unable to feed them. We're looking at academic failure on a scale that's unprecedented in this state and country, but in this state also. And so the question becomes, what are we going to do? President Obama won. As he said in Des Moines on Monday night, this was his last visit. He might come back to Iowa again. But the Obama administration will be almost irrelevant
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and all of you who have spoken in the first round. I just want to say very quickly that I agree with what Jonathan has said from the standpoint that if we do not pick up where Obama is this time, President Barack Obama is in the last 4 years that he can possibly serve, we are in a place that says to us, if we have any common sense at all, as people of color, as African Americans, that we have to put together the game that will change these conditions that were just being talked about by Jonathan. We will have to change people's mind or see how they can be approached who no longer seem to be interested in the fact that it's been predicted that 3-year-olds today will be occupying our prisons in the years to come. This is the new industry. Everybody wants in on this, and at the expense of our children, and talking about kids being 2 and 3 years old, and they are like little sponges, but then they get to the point and they get up to like 3rd grade, and there was something in the paper, it's been a few months ago, but the gist of it was, if they're not reading by 3rd grade, pass them on. I mean, how could we even get that in our head, that we could even think in terms of our children being written off and the many other social ills that they are facing, and most of them have to do with lack of parenting, And so Washington is not going to solve that problem for us. We're going to have to solve those kinds of problems right here in Iowa. And everything, I think Dr. Blackwell, because everything is not peachy keen, and we know that we still have problems that involve women, for instance, who are not paid as much as men. We're concerned about our youth. I think that we should be concerned also about immigration. There are just so many, because the face of Iowa, and certainly the face of Waterloo, we're sitting right here around this table, we know that we have seen these changes. And it's not going to go back the other way. So we have got to make up our mind, how can we continue? Because we did not continue after President Obama won. We went home, I don't know where we went. I don't know whether we went to the movies or went home or took a trip or whatever we did. But whatever it was not enough. You cannot depend on one person to right the whole world. And I think we let ourselves down, and I think we let him down. We have a second chance now to do those things that will help make this an America that we want to be proud of, and where justice can be found. I'm going back to you.
I'm not, I certainly recognize all the problems, Jonathan, that you have put on the table. And one of the things that was going through my mind is that pursuing change is not a one-time event. And an election is a one-time event. But it bothers me sometimes that we don't have personal agendas for ourselves in terms of how we're going to engage the problems in our community. And so the election allows us to come together as a group, and we can talk about our problems, but then when we walk away, we haven't maintained that personal agenda that was so much a part of the survival of our people. We have been a people who have taken individual responsibilities for our communities, regardless how disparate they were in various cities across the country. But I think that there's some mitigating factors that have come in, and these are not excuses. But as we have become more able to be consumptive in our behavior, we've let materialism take the place of our need to advance ourselves in some of those non-material ways. And so as parents, as young people, we've been induced by things that we see, and we think that things that we want that will make us happy will be our shoes, will be our this, will be our that, but those things go away. The enduring things and values of our community, like community education, the responsibility to work and take care of yourself, the ability to pass on a culture, those things have been dissipated and replaced by consumptive kind of behaviors, I believe, because we see our church involvement has dwindled. You know, we don't see the same numbers of people every, you know, just doing those things that would promote the values. So we have a value gap that has resulted in these manifestations that we see in terms of violence, drug use, and all of those other things. So the question for me becomes, how might we instill those values back into our community and begin to educate, I hate to, but begin to educate our youth to understand, and even our, not just our youth, those people you said 45 and below, that whole group, understand how values have played a part of the ethos of our community in terms of the survival, in terms of that identity. That's been stripped away through public policy, it's been stripped away through consumerism, and it's been stripped away through our parenting kind of abyss that has occurred. We are not now the value-oriented, this is just me talking, the value-oriented group of people that were able to survive through some of the most horrendous treatment in this country. And, you know, and I'm just really, Jonathan, thinking, but when I see what's going on, something took the place in our value agenda. And I can think of a couple of things I think that have taken place.
If I can say this real quick, though, and I just looked at the data, 65.6% of the families with kids in the Waterloo School District cannot feed them. Much, much worse for black kids. Now, the academic failure is even worse. But this is what we know. For example, in Des Moines, when Joshua Christian Academy was opened by some black folks who knew how to teach kids, those kids are now blowing by white kids in the Des Moines schools. We know there's a simple solution in many respects to the academic challenges that face black kids in Waterloo, for example. That's for black folks who know how to teach, to divest themselves from a system that has made them comfortable in taking care of them, and to do what we did 100 years ago when we actually operated our own schools, set our own values from 8 to 5, and our kids learned. There are solutions. For example, we know that we can raise $25,000 for a pastor's anniversary, and at the corner by Heaven Robbie House in Cedar Rapids, tonight, they will drop about $500,000 on dope and other things. We have resources. What we don't want to do is spend responsibly, invest responsibly, own responsibly. We want other folks to do it for us. The solutions are not that difficult. The problem is that we have come to the point where we're comfortable being wards of the state. Not just folks on food stamps, but folks in academia, in corporate America, at John Deere. We're comfortable with other folks taking care of our needs while we spend on our wants. The fact of the matter is that we as a community are well-resourced. We have money, we have talents and skills. What we lack is discipline and the simple resolve to take care of ourselves and be responsible for ourselves. White folks are hurting. I had a meeting this morning and I explained to a young lady trying to develop an education model in Des Moines that affluent middle-class white kids in our district were our leading dropouts. And I said, if white kids ain't learning, how black kids gonna learn in the system?
Okay, Jonathan, I don't know if you can continue to stay with us. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Deborah coined something that I like, so I'm going to use it again. And I think you called it post-election conversation. And that's what we're having here, and we're inviting you now to call us. The number here is 319-234-1441. Should you have a question or an opinion that you would like to share with the greater listening audience. I want to go back to and pose this in the form of a question and I'd like to start with Dr. Blackwell again. The village that saved us and brought us where we are, except for the last 2 generations when we lost it all. The village was everything to us. I have dear memories of growing up in a community where everybody looked after everybody. I mean, there was protection there. That, you know, we're never gonna get back to leaving doors open. I hope not. If y'all are doing that, stop. But anyway, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. Dr. Blackwell, would you share with us, did you grow up in a village, and do you think that we need the village, and can it be restored? That's 3 questions.
Okay, well, I did grow up in a place called Father Panic Village, which in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which was basically a ghetto named after a Catholic priest, but nevertheless, it was a ghetto. And then we moved to Beersley Terrace, which was another ghetto, and tenement apartment complexes. And at one point, Beersley Terrace was called Little Harlem, just about an hour and 15 minutes outside of New York City, outside of Harlem. So I have a different take on this whole idea about the village, because I think that even though you know, we have these proverbs about villages and the whole community taking care of one another, I think that we have to recognize that there was a lot of not taking care of each other also, and that people were not at that time achieving necessarily academically, and were not pooling their resources. I mean, when I think of the Civil Rights Movement and just prior to the Civil Rights Movement, the fact of the matter is that only less than 10% of the churches were really vigorously involved in the movement. There were a lot of churches that were opposed to the Civil Rights Movement and demonstrating and stuff. So I don't really necessarily believe in these halcyon days when we were becoming more educated, more literate, or what have you, because that's just not the real history. But I do believe that I share a passion with Jonathan concerning the poor. And I knew that when we were electing President Obama, that he wasn't really at the time either able or his heart wasn't in addressing the concerns of the poor. I mean, as Dr. Clayton was saying, that everybody talks about the middle class and don't recognize that there's a working class and an underclass of people whose concerns need to be dealt with, and they're not. It was bandied about a long time ago about how we can pool our resources. Church members can come together, churches can come together, but we didn't do it.
We did not do it.
And so that's still out there. I'm not sure whether I fully understand it, because I'm not one who, at the moment, David, believes in separation necessarily of the races. I think that I still look at the vision that Martin Luther King had of a wholly integrated society, but we're far from that. And maybe temporarily we need to do some things to focus on ourselves and our community, as we did intermittently in our history. But I feel that I don't want to go as far as to say that we don't need the government. I think the government is around to protect its citizens, and we just have to make sure that it does what it says it's going to do on paper. And we have not yet been in a society where that really happens. So I don't know what you think about that, David, but maybe you can chime in on that.
Yeah, and let me say, since I was pulled out for about 10 minutes, I sort of lost track of what was going on in the discussion. And one of the reasons I was pulled out, I had a call from Reverend Belinda Creighton Smith, who's not feeling well. And as Jonathan was talking about this whole issue of parents and schools and people taking responsibility and so forth and so on, she raised a couple of points that I try to get dealing with this generational difference in child rearing strategies from working class to middle class people, how they interact and raise their children and so forth. And so how that and the history of us coming here and how that all plays into how well people do in school, how people raise their children, how they interact with them, and so forth and so on. And then, but to this thing of can we restore the village? You can look at it a whole number of ways, but the thing, Lou, that sort of concerns me in these post-election discussions is one of the most fundamental mechanics of the election. Every single election, we're dealing with issues of voter fraud and voter repression and so forth. And as the minute the election is over, we don't deal with that anymore. We don't deal with the felony disenfranchisement, people right to vote and so forth. And so that's one of, I know the question is dealing with can we restore the village, but what's one of the most effective ways of helping to restore the village? Getting everybody access to voting so that we can make the decisions to put into office the people who may be willing to help to restore the village. And so that seems to always get lost the day after the election. And my organization, Social Action Inc., will not lose a piece of that because we're going to start immediately dealing with a specific issue of felony disenfranchisement. And so now that the Democrats may have some power, some authority, we will start with them because some laws need to be changed to begin to deal with that issue. So that's sort of my comments on restoring the village, is getting people full access to participate in the democratic process.
I'm going to ask you, so one of the things you're saying that even if we were to embrace this concept of village, we've got to be willing to allow all people to be a member of the village. You can't have a village and have some people on the outside, like the poor, like those who are disenfranchised from the vote. You can't have people on the outside who are coming into our country as immigrants who want to fully participate. So even if we were to embrace this notion of village, we would also have to embrace the notion that all people, believe it or not, are created equal and deserve to be a part of the village. A part of this beloved community that King talked about, supposed and had the supposition that all people would be welcomed into the community and / village, if we want to use it that way. But what this election showed us, that even though numbers of people came out, a high number of people came out too who were opposed to the concept of a unified United States and who had been victimized by the kind of lies that were being promoted and the fear that was being instilled that allowed their racism to surface and to become a part of this election. When you have people who are willing to believe that somebody is still a Muslim, that somebody is a Marxist or socialist wanting to take over the country, that somebody wants to take your guns, that somebody, you know, when you have people who can be fed that bill of goods, this election showed the polarization, Michael, that you are talking about, and with that polarization, even within communities, the notion of village would be prohibitive because we're not willing to accept, even within our own community, we're not willing to accept the plight of the poor other than to say it's their fault that they're poor. We're not willing to do the structural analysis as well as the individual analysis to let us realize that the culture cannot be changed by a conservative agenda or solely by a progressive agenda, because culture doesn't work that way. So David, your point, I think, is that if we're going to, if you were to say Lou's question, if we're going to even approach a village, we got to have all the members in. And so that's going to take a lot of self-interrogation because people say a lot of things and act an entirely different way. And I think that's what the election showed us too publicly, that a candidate could say something and act as if it was true. It wasn't like lying at the end. It was like the biggest falsehood that had been set in motion starting in 2009. I have never seen people construct a lie so well. They crafted it and then convinced their own people to pay for the lie. And now they're upset because they lost on a lie, you know. So this village thing, it means, can we at least accept, can I accept Michael with his differences of opinion? Can I accept Deborah? Can I accept David? and his felons, can I accept all of that so that there's a larger goal in terms of survival and in terms of culture that we want to pursue, and not just a survival mentality, but maybe a revolutionary mentality, which would suggest that we can all be a part of this.
And we accept each and every one of them by allowing and encouraging each and every one of them to
Have a
with
voice.
their ballot.
Yeah.
The ballot
Yeah.
box,
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Deborah? You have anything at this point? All right.
Well, I would say that the discussion is great. Just tell me how to put all this in a bill form so that I can
Oh, we got some
legislate.
ideas for you.
What can I do?
We thought you never asked.
We can form our own ally
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, absolutely, because I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. When Jonathan was talking, and as Dr. Clayton, Dr. Blackwood, David, everyone was speaking, this whole country is off track. I was just sitting here thinking, how do we get back to where we once were as a community? Well, we had laws in place that said black people, you all gotta live here, back in the day, and so therefore our communities were stronger. We had businesses in our communities due to segregation. We had, all of our teachers and our doctors and lawyers, all the strength, the strong individuals all lived in the community.
Right.
And now, with this thing called integration, we kind of all scattered out, and we just left the heart of our communities with people who are struggling, who struggle a little bit more. But I guess I'm an eternal optimist. I mean, I think that, as the people I just talked to on the campaign trail, I was just impressed by the fact that individually, when you talk to people, I mean, single moms, they're working hard for their children and making sure their children are, getting what they need, and they're going to the PTA meetings and the conferences, things like that. But yes, to go back what Jonathan says regarding our schools, I think there needs to be some reforms in education because there is still a tremendous achievement gap among our African American students, and so that's another huge issue that we have to address. But I do again believe that public policy does play a huge role in this, and I think having the right folks in office, I will say, and unfortunately we're a two-party system in this country, and there are of course many other parties as well, independents, libertarians, things like that, but the dominant parties are usually, Democrat, Republican, where we have to try to figure out, now that we have our president in place, and who is by far obviously a much better choice for this and direction for this country than Mitt Romney would ever be, in terms of having an all-inclusive agenda. I think that we all, now it comes down to individuals staying engaged, not giving up, not looking at all of us, in this room to solve the problems. And I think you said, Lou, once before, not looking to our president to just solve all of our issues. I mean, there's just a lot that contribute to our problems as a people. Again, David talked about the, people with felonies, the high incarceration rate of our men who generally, are the man, where's the fathers in the lives of the children. So, there's public policy that has played a part in our problems as a people, but yet and still I think that being in the American culture of, and I think you said consumerism, Dr. Clayton.
Yeah, another word too.
Yeah, consumerism, you talk about parenting, there was another word that you said, it just kind of slipped my
I don't know, I
mind
was
here.
on the classroom mode.
Yeah, but that was good because we are a society of immediacy right now. Let's have it now, and I'll even go as far as saying being a media having a background in media. I mean, and the garbage we see on TV. I mean, I
Oh, my goodness.
have friends who sit and watch
Yeah.
reality TV and all these particular shows, and you know, it's good entertainment, but I think what we see in media can have a detrimental effect, that we begin to think it's okay to act this
Yeah.
way, you know.
Yeah.
So there's so many problems that affect our community, but I think the main thing is that we have to, as a people, you know, encourage each other, support one another, definitely stay engaged in the political process, talk to me constantly when there's problems, when you feel that, you know, and David, yes, I look forward to working with your group, you guys, with this whole felony thing. I've always worked on that issue because I know that has been a major issue in our community as well.
I wanna,
We
can I,
have a call that's coming
Oh,
up.
okay.
You hold just a
Yeah,
minute,
yeah.
we were being joined now.
Okay.
Dr. Holmes,
Yes.
so glad that you could join us.
Oh, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. We named this the post-election conversation that's going on. So anything that comes under that heading, anything you'd like to share, please do that now.
Yes. First of all, I would like to say that during the next election time, I think that being in early childhood, that they need to add some type of child care or assistance for families with young children. And I was in a store a couple of days ago, and I was talking to a Hispanic mother, and I was getting an extra copy of the Obama victory paper. And she said, "Oh, I'm so glad Obama won." And she said, "I didn't get to vote." And she said, I've got a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. And she proceeded to say one of her friends went to vote, and she stood in line for 2 hours. She said, "I could not stand in line 2 hours with my 2 children. I just can't." Mm-hmm. And I gave her some other ways that she could have voted. She just didn't know, you know. Mm-hmm. But I think in the future that's something we should look at. I also saw that in Florida with their ridiculous long lines with single moms and mothers standing in that line with those young children, and they were trying to give them water, and, you know, they were telling people to go give them food. And so, you know, some of the voter suppression issues among things dealing with families, with children, and the people having to stand in long lines. And I heard President Obama say he wants to do something about
Yes,
that.
he did.
That was one point I wanted to make. And the second point I wanted to make is my youngest just turned 18. Mm-hmm. And as time approached, we got him registered. And when I first went down to the courthouse to take his registration papers, they said, "Oh, no, he's got to come in person." And I said, "Oh, he's in school because, you know, he's still in high school." And she said, "Does he come in with his ID? Because how would we know who he is? Anybody can come and say that there." So I said, "Okay." And then she said, "So we will be open Saturday." And he can, you know, I told her I'd bring him down there, which was true. But here's what I wanted to say. Just like we have expectations for our children to go to college, I also had the expectation that he would also vote. And so I went down there with him, you know, because he didn't know that was his first time. And I wanted to say that his parents and his family members, that we talked to our children about voting and what happened in past generations and the struggles that we went through to be able to vote. Then we have to kind of make sure that we do get our children there to vote, and that this is a part of our family. This is a part of our custom. Because I told him, I said, if you don't vote, you don't have any rights.
That's
And so I
right.
wanted to point out those 2 points.
Okay, we thank you so much for calling in. And Dr. Clayton, I know you had watching the clock here, because when we get closer, we're going to have about a minute and a half to close out.
I just wanted to affirm something that Dr. Blackwell said in terms of our need to look at structure. You know, it bothers me when we look at some of the social problems that we have. Every intervention that we attempt is directed at the victim of the problem as opposed to the system that the problem is located in. Let's get some whiteboards, let's do this. But let's look at our teachers, let's look at the way the school day is structured, let's look at the content of the curriculum. Let's really attack problems. If we want to deal with the prison and the criminal justice system, it's not like, why are these guys committing crimes? It's like, what kind of system are they in where the jobs don't exist or something? You know, so I really want to affirm what you said, Mike, in terms of these problems require a full investigation, not just one side of the equation. Behavior is always a function of people interacting with environments. And so if you look at your solution only on the part of the person, you're not going to solve the problem. If you look at it only on the part of the environment, you're not going to solve. And so that need to compromise ideology and investigative techniques is there. But if you have a group of people who are polarized and they're so stuck in their ideology, they're only going to look at one half of the problem, and we will continue to fight this problem over and over. So I wanted to affirm, Michael, with some psychology, that behavior is a function of people interacting in environments, and so you attack both parts and not just one.
Well, our time is going so fast. David wanted to give you another shot, and Jonathan, but we'll have to make it short.
Okay, well, I just, on that last point that Dr. Clayton was making, that whole, I think it was William Ryan who came and coined the term blaming the victim. And that what you're saying, what Blackwell is saying, is as he calls it, the most sophisticated form of blaming the victim without looking at the social, structural inequalities.
Absolutely.
And we don't even realize that we're doing it. We focus all of our attention on the individual and not on the structure. So I just want to add that to that.
Exactly, yeah.
Because many of us don't know we're doing it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Jonathan, did you have something you wanted to add at this point?
Look, you know what? We need to retire the term victim, and we need to embrace the fact that we have the ability to be the solution we're looking for. You know, there's no question that integration created a $1 trillion economic impact on the black community.
Okay, and Jonathan, I know you have a lot more to say. I know that everybody does. We'll probably come back at a different time, but I want to give everybody a last shot at where we are. And I would like to include this. This happened many years ago in the Catholic Church, and they were using this slogan. I want to know what you think about it as we leave, and I would like for Dr. Blackwell to be the last voice that you hear today. Here is what they said. If you want peace, work for justice, because there'll never be peace as long as people feel that there's no justice. What do you think about that? David, certainly ties in with what you are working on and anticipating.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. I'll just quote Dr. King, who said, injustice anywhere, the threat to justice everywhere.
Exactly, okay.
And I would agree with that too. Again, thank you for this opportunity, Lou, to be here today.
You gotta come back,
you know, again, I'm a lawmaker. I make laws. I give me ideas of bills. Talk to me. I'll get those bills drafted, and then I'll need y'all to stand behind me as we push hard to make these things happen.
Mike,
Doctor, do you think that that still is with us today, that we have so much injustice, that is certainly one of the larger pieces that needs to be included in however we go forward?
Oh, yes, most definitely, but I think what needs to be added is that we need to bring in more people to help in the fight, because, you know, you got some people that are out there and they become scapegoats a lot of times. We need to let people know that they have company and that they can, you know, if they go down, other people will take their place, you know. And so that's what we need to do. We need to encourage people to fight the system and try to effectuate justice in the land.
It's
We
like
appreciate
that deformation of the birds. Oh, anyhow, that's a whole,
Is
they're
that
always flying in
that
peace.
another-
The one in the
another
front
show?
gets knocked off, the
That's
others
right.
can come
That's
up
right.
and take their place. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, I hope that this is not the last, but the first of a post-election conversation that needs to go forward. It needs a lot of help. We need a lot of people to join in. So if you have things that you have a concern about and want to share that in order to open up additional conversations on how we're going to get where we think we need to be. We want to say thanks to our listening audience out there, and to keep it real, and to use the radio station for the good, for all of us, and especially our children, They're gonna need it more than we've ever needed it before. So thanks to all of you here today for coming, and anyone who would like to be on a future show, just call the station. Our number here is 319-234-1441. We want to have the biggest tent in the whole world.
Yes.
It's a place for all of us.
Absolutely.